and welcome to our Echoes of Hate conference, Digital Communication, Populism, and the Regulation of Hate Speech. My name is Coşkun Yorulmaz. I'm a human rights lawyer. I work with others. To begin, I would really like to extend our thanks to our co-organizers, Human Rights in Context of Ghent University, and Bonavero Institute of Human Rights of the Oxford University, and Human Rights Implementation Center of the University of Bristol, and Institut de Drets Humans of Universitat de Valencia. As others, we have been organizing events on hate speech for a while now, and I'm proud to say that we are a member of the No to Hate network, which is being supported by the Council of Europe. And this conference is one of those string of events that we have been organizing, and I'm really happy to see you here. And I'd like to extend our special thanks to Professor Clara Burbana Herrera and Professor Yves Hayek and Dr. Eliza Bechtold and our Zoe Grassi for all their efforts of making this conference possible. So we'll have a total of 6 sessions. 2 of them will start in De Krook, just across the road from here, and the rest will be held here. And so we'll have a very brief lunch break at 12:50 for an hour or so. And if you need any help, you will see our colleagues with their yellow name tags. So don't hesitate to approach them if you need any help. So first, I would like to invite Professor Clara Burbana Herrera for her opening remarks. No? Then I'm inviting Eliza Bechtold, Dr. Eliza Bechtold, for her keynote speech. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Clara and I will do it together.
Together,
so,
okay.
Yes.
And it's Professor Yves Hayek.
Thank you. Okay, dear colleagues and distinguished participants, as director of the program for studies on human rights in context at Ghent University, it is truly a great pleasure to welcome you to this international conference, Echoes of Hate. Ghent University has a long-standing commitment to research excellence in the field of human rights, with particular attention to the protection of vulnerable individuals and groups across diverse social, political, and legal contexts. Our program seeks to foster critical interdisciplinary scholarship that engages with both normative frameworks and lived realities. It is therefore especially fitting that we host this wonderful conference at a moment when questions surrounding hate speech, digital communication, and populism demand renewed scholarly and public attention. We are particularly pleased to have co-organized this event with our esteemed colleagues from the Bonavero Institute at the University of Oxford, the Human Rights Implementation Center at the University of Bristol, the Institut de Drets Humans, Human Rights Institute of the University of Valencia, and the Raoul Wallenberg Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law, affiliated with Lund University, and of course, with solidarity with others. This collaboration reflects a shared commitment to advancing knowledge, encouraging dialogue, and strengthening an open and interconnected academic community across institutions and disciplines. In the digital era, spaces for rigorous, informed, and critical discussion are not simply valuable, they are essential. This conference has been structured around 6 thematic panels covering issues such as the governing hate online, law and platform responsibility, and the architecture of digital hostility, populism, and digital polarization. The gender dimensions of online misogyny, the role of the media and journalism in countering hate narratives, and the psychological and emotional experiences of hate in online spaces. We are confident that these discussions will be intellectually stimulating, constructive, and deeply relevant to the challenges we collectively face. We hope that this conference will not only advance academic understanding, but also contribute to more effective and principled responses to hate speech in digital contexts. Thank you all for joining us, for contributing to what promises to be a thoughtful and productive conference. Thank you very much. Now I will call, first of all, my colleague, Professor Clara Bourbon.
Welcome to our conference. Thank you all for being here today. This academic event brings together experts to explore how social tensions, digital technologies, and political communication shape the presence of hate in contemporary public life. We have invited scholars, practitioners, and policy experts to examine the challenges of communication in a time of polarization and technological change. At the center of our discussions is hate speech. Hate speech is any kind of communication in speech, writing, or behavior that attacks or uses pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of who they are. In other words, based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, gender, or other identifying factor. At the international level, there is no single legal definition of hate speech. This makes it a topic open to debate, especially in relation to freedom of opinion and expression, equality, and non-discrimination. Today, we will have 19 panelists with different backgrounds and perspectives from 13 diverse countries, including the United Kingdom, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Finland, Turkey, Ireland, China, South Africa, India, Poland, and Mexico. This international representation shows how relevant these challenges are worldwide and provides a diversity on perspectives in our discussions. They have been divided in 6 thematic panels, carefully organized to cover the key dimensions of hate speech. Each panel combines theory and research, offering us both a deeper understanding of these issues and practical ideas for responding to hate speech. Each panelist will speak for 15 minutes, followed by a time for questions and discussions, allowing us to engage actively with the topics. We hope today will foster dialogue and new collaborations. Our aim is to promote not only academic debate, but also practical strategies for protecting human rights. Thank you very much again for your presence. I look forward to a day of rich and inspiring discussions.
My name is Eliza Bechtold, and I'm the Programs Manager and a Research Fellow at the Bonnevero Institute of Human Rights at the University of Oxford. My PhD and my current research focuses on the regulation of extreme speech in the digital age, specifically hate speech, disinformation, and terrorist-related speech. I'm also a human rights lawyer and a former attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union. Given my background and expertise, it's unsurprising that I'm delighted to be here today to participate in the conference and be part of the editorial board. At the outset, I think it's important to acknowledge that in Europe and elsewhere, hate is on the rise. This isn't news to any of us who've been paying attention, but I think it's important to highlight what a particularly perilous time we're in. In 2023, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights noted his disgust of the sharp rise in cases of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other hate speech, both online and offline, since the 7th October attack in Israel, noting a sharp increase in hate speech, violence and discrimination, deepening social fractures, and polarization. What we're currently seeing is an exacerbation of what is already a crisis. In 2020, for example, in 2020, the Council of Europe's Anti-Racism Commission raised alarm over ultra-nationalistic and xenophobic politics across Europe, hate speech setting the tone on social media, rampant anti-Semitism, and anti-Muslim hatred. And as far back as 2019, 30 independent UN experts published an open letter urging states and social media platforms to take action to curb the spread of hate speech, expressing alarm at the increase in hateful expression and incitement to discrimination and hatred against migrants, minority groups, and various ethnic groups in several countries. So, again, we all know this, right? This is a momentous problem with no easy solutions. As the Southern Poverty Law Center in the US observed, quote, "Hate persists, it's relentless," end quote. And so too must those who work to address the problem of hate in our societies, whether they are lawyers, policy advocates, journalists, or members of the media, or academics. I'm an academic and a lawyer, so. In so doing, right, we must acknowledge that there are significant obstacles to this work, and that such efforts, particularly legal regulation, raise questions and tensions regarding the adequate protection of important rights, such as freedom of expression. Indeed, in Europe and elsewhere, the regulatory response to rises in hatred has been to pass measures targeting or criminalizing hate speech. Often these definitions in these statutes are very vague, overbroad, and raise the concern that they're capturing speech that goes well beyond traditional conceptions of incitement. I propose that we think about these questions and tensions while engaging with the panels and the speakers today. These include the distinction between hate speech and legitimate political expression, and acknowledging that that line between the two is very heavily contested. As Robert Post observes, when the law seeks to combat hate by way of prescribing expression, it is not because the state believes that hate per se should be entirely eliminated from society, but rather it's important because the government desires to silence or deter hateful expression directed to identifiable groups, particularly historically and marginalized groups, in particular contexts as well, because we're talking about public discourse primarily. Thus, debates about hate speech are not about whether all hateful speech should be prescribed everywhere, nor do these debates concern whether it is proper for states to regulate expression that incites immediate violence, because all liberal democracies, including the United States, for the sake of argument, we're going to assume that the United States is still a liberal democracy, because that's an entire another conference, prescribe such expression. Rather, the key question is whether hateful expression in public discourse that is unlikely to lead to immediate violence, but that may produce more long-term, subtle, or uncertain harms should be prescribed. Additionally, while there is consensus that hate is on the rise and that combating rising levels of societal hate is a laudable goal, the extent to which restrictions on freedom of expression, both online and offline, are legitimate or an effective means by which to challenge hatred remains heavily contested. And while the fight against hate is both noble and well-intended, it is also burdened by ambivalences, paradoxes, and unsettled concerns that are the subject of long-standing debates. This is reflected in the UN's observation that even the characterization of what is hateful is controversial and disputed. We've observed just how accurate this observation is through the recent crackdown on speech in support of Palestinian human rights, and how legitimate criticism of the actions of the Israeli government can be conflated with anti-Semitism for political ends, and thereby silencing particular viewpoints from public discourse. Ultimately, these debates are about the appropriate way to combat hate, which every reasonable person agrees is a good thing, and the extent to which restrictions on certain rights for the purpose of achieving that objective are legitimate. And these debates continue, notwithstanding the efforts of countless experts to provide answers, right, to these and other difficult questions. We should also consider the rise of societal hatred against the backdrop of the global rise in populism and of populist leaders stoking societal tensions and using the language of hate to fuel divisiveness and to scapegoat vulnerable and marginalized groups for problems that these actors have no interest in solving. Recent vehement attacks on immigrants provide illustrative examples of such tactics. We need look no further than President Trump's recent comments regarding Somali immigrants in the US, in which he referred to them as, quote, garbage, who take from the country and give nothing in return. So rising levels of hatred against immigrants should be linked with such hateful and dangerous rhetoric, particularly when that speech comes from state and political actors. This raises the question of how to approach tackling the challenges of societal hate when the purveyor of hateful expression is the government itself. Surely we cannot reasonably expect such actors to regulate speech in ways that delineate between hate speech and legitimate political expression, or in ways that respect the value of open debate and democratic deliberation. Additionally, state and political actors pose a unique danger because of the outsized influence of their voices in public discourse, particularly online. And this relates to another important issue in this space, which is the regulation of hateful expression on online platforms, and how social media is a particularly attractive forum for the proliferation of hate because it's subject to less scrutiny than offline speech, and the media is less able to perform its traditional gatekeeping function, right? Because the speech is on there, it travels very quickly, and a lot of people see it. And even if that is false speech, which often hate speech is also disinformation, fact-checking isn't particularly effective, right? So once it's out there, it's very hard to change people's opinion about what's being said. I also want to take the opportunity, because I always talk about this in my research, the value of international human rights law as a useful normative framework when thinking about the regulation of extreme speech, including hate speech. I'm going to highlight the Rabat Plan of Action in particular. It recommends that prescriptions on hateful expression focus exclusively on the advocacy of discriminatory hatred that constitute incitement to hostility, discrimination, or violence, rather than the advocacy of hatred without regard to its tendency to incite action by the audience, and require likelihood of imminent harm and a reasonable probability of discrimination, hostility, or violence occurring as a direct consequence of the speech. The UN further advises that only incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence that meet all 6 criteria of the Rabat Plan should be criminalized, and that less severe forms of incitement or hate speech warrant administrative, law-based restrictions or public policy responses. What we see across Europe, this might be controversial, sort of vague and imprecise regulations, right? The target expression that goes well beyond what is recommended in the Rabat Plan and other facets of international human rights law. So ultimately, these debates around regulation of hate speech wrestle with broad questions of where we should draw the line between speech that we must tolerate as part of living in a democratic society and regulation that is justified in protecting particular groups from harm. In thinking about this question, we should also consider what other tools are available to fight rising levels of societal hatred that do not implicate the exercise of fundamental rights like freedom of expression. These tools include strengthening anti-discrimination legislation, increasing the capacity of public institutions to tackle intolerance and discrimination, public information and education campaigns directed to combating negative stereotypes and discrimination against minority groups, and educational initiatives to promote human rights and diversity. Again, maybe controversial, but I'm just going to throw this out there. These types of tools may be preferable to legal prescriptions on expression because they target the root causes of societal hatred, and as a result, may be more effective than targeting individual speakers. They also engage states in the important work of addressing the systemic and cultural forces that drive inequality and discrimination. I think these tools are increasingly important in the digital age as hateful expression proliferates on online platforms and false narratives and conspiracy theories regarding marginalized groups take center stage in debates like immigration, And of course, when governments are part of the problem, right, in purveying disinformation, hate speech, everything becomes more complicated and challenging. Unfortunately, I don't have any answers to any of these difficult questions or how to tackle these challenges, but what I do know is that they will not be overcome, for example, by looking to the law for a single solution or looking to policy for a single solution. What is needed is a multifaceted approach that engages with multiple stakeholders and that wrestles with the challenges and tensions that arise in this context rather than trying to sidestep them. And additionally, government efforts to reduce societal hatred by way of regulatory measures and the evidence proffered in support of those measures should be rigorously interrogated in circumstances in which human rights are implicated. And finally, I invite us all to keep in mind that while we may come down on different sides of certain debates within the broader discourse, we are all on the same side in terms of sharing a belief in equality, in tolerance, and that every human being, regardless of race, gender identity, immigration status, religion, or sexual orientation, deserves to live a dignified life free from harm and violence. Thank you.